You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know about the training that Limitless Leadership is doing in Dallas, January 16th through the 18th, 2025. We're going to be doing a leadership, performance, sales, and technician hybrid type of training. No one else in the industry is doing this. Hosted by Standard Motor Products, will be in Dallas at their facility, January 16th through the 18th. If you have any interest in joining, this training is industry leading. Reach out to me via email, josh@thebeardedleader.com for more information. Hope to see you there. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to jump right into today's episode. We're joined today by my guest, a friend of mine. He is a husband. He's a father. He is the head of business development at Tekmetric. Our guest today is PJ Leslie.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being here, PJ. Thanks for being on the show. Man, I'm excited for our audience to get to know you. You, along with Tekmetric, are doing some incredible things across the automotive repair industry, have been for a while now. The beauty in who you are and what you do for the industry is the fact that you were one of the first 10 people that hired or that jumped on with Tekmetric. And I'm going to ask for you to share with the audience how many folks are there now, what you do, your background, all the things. But man, I'm excited for this episode. So jump right into it, PJ.
Yeah. So we have been very fortunate, and I guess I'll start with the end here. And yeah, Tekmetric, we've got, I don't know, 220, 240 employees now. It's kind of weird. There's people that I don't know. I want to meet them, but I haven't got a chance to meet them yet. We did just recently have our first formal acquisition. We acquired Shop Genie, yes, which definitely caused some waves, and it put us on some people's radars that I don't think we were expecting. There was just this kind of adverse effect in a positive way that came about. And, I just got back from SEMA last week, and it was crazy how many people came up to us, knew about it, put us on a lot of larger clients' radars that I wasn't expecting, but we'll take it, right? So yeah, I was one of the first 10 employees that got hired at Tekmetric, and I guess I'll start at the beginning. So, when I was 15 years old, I think we're past the statute of limitations. I may have been paid under the table at a Quick Lube. I started out working at a Quick Lube. Grew up very, very, I would say lower to middle class at best. My dad was a preacher for 28 years in the metropolis of Hugh Springs, Texas, right? So we had one stoplight that was red, yellow, and green, and then one blinking light. And that was it. And so, biggest employer out there was a steel mill. And, my parents gave me everything I needed. I had everything I ever needed, but I always wanted more. My mom said I had a champagne taste, but a beer budget. And I said, well, I can change the budget. And, so I started out when I was like 14 years old, wanted to buy my own clothes. I wanted to have a truck soon. And my family focused on taking care of other people, right? Like I said, we had everything we needed, but they took care of the congregation and the community at any given point. And I got so many stories about, people who needed things and would knock on our door. Nobody calls a preacher when things are going well, right? Right. And so I say all that to say that I wanted more. So I started that job at a Quick Lube. Working on 18-wheelers and changing oil and greasing 18-wheelers and vehicles. Did that, figured out that I don't think I wanted to do that forever. And so fast forward, after high school, I started working at a car dealership. I was going to college full-time. I put myself through college through working 2 or 3 jobs at any given point, and took on student loans and et cetera. One of the jobs I had was I was working at a car dealership as a salesman, and I had a great sales manager. He did so many little tricks and things that taught me, like, I didn't realize it, but watching my dad for that long, he was a bit of a salesman. He believed in what he was talking about, and he wanted other people to understand it and believe it too, through benevolence and through kindness and leading by example. But then, I didn't know how to necessarily communicate that. And so then I have these sales managers that taught me how to speak to people, how to take what they're giving you, how to listen, and then turn that around and be like, hey, you said that you wanted this, and framing it up, right? Frame it up in a way that they absorb, that they receive that information. And it was very helpful. And I think from that moment on, I was kind of hooked. So put myself through college, always worked in some sort of sales. It was hard to work at the dealership. It's a lot of hours and go to school. I ended up working a lot of sales jobs in terms of like cell phones. Cell phone sales were very lucrative back then. So I worked in cell phones, cell phone sales. I did retail sales and close as well. And that was good. It helped a lot. And then after college, moved into sales for construction services. So big, large construction services. And that's where I actually ended up meeting the founders of Tekmetric. So I was working for a big construction company at the time, and I sold large scale construction renovations and natural disaster restoration. Houston, go figure, right?
Sure.
So fast forward, and that was when I met Prashant, one of the co-founders of Tekmetric. I met him in 2007, working. One of my customers recruited me over to help renovate apartment complexes here in Houston, and almost immediately met Sunil, because Sunil was opening his repair shop in Houston right around 2007, I want to say. So I met those guys and just always stayed in touch. And kind of the last part of how I ended up here was really when I got into the dealership world. So my uncle decides he wants to buy a Ford dealership in Northeast Texas. And he's like, hey, you want to come run it? And I'm like, sure. How hard could it be? And turns out it's unbelievably hard. There was one employee when we took over. No joke. They had sold 10 cars the entire year before we got there. It was, it was just kind of dying on the vine. And went in there and just kind of self-taught around sales, finance, parts and service. I did all of it for a while, and then just hired and built, as best we could, a sustainable business over about 7 years up in Northeast Texas. And so that was where I really got the functional experience of dealing with repair shop owners today. Because now if I go into a repair shop and they're like, hey, my numbers are X and I want to go to Y, or my customers don't want this. And I'm like, no, hang on, your customers do want this, and let me show you how. That was where I really got the functional leadership and experience that I apply today when I go talk to repair shop owners. So that's the fastest 4 or 5 minute elevator pitch of my entire career, pretty much. So
hey, well, PJ, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think we needed to hear all of that. There's so many pieces of nuggets that you just dropped that I wanted to hang on to, and one of them is the fact that you talked about the importance of believing in what you're talking about. As a salesman, it's important that we believe in what we're selling. That's one easier way to be able to influence the buyer. Talk about how important it is to be influential in your sales through the art of listening, but also what is it about Tekmetric that you bought into years ago and still believe in to this day?
Well, I learned something actually from my wife. So my wife and I are like complete opposites. It's the old like opposites attract thing. And my wife started out in sales in a global lens company, a German company. She started out as a sales rep, just going out and visiting optometrists, and she ended up as the assistant global director or global director of business development. Weird. We both ended up as in business development. Yeah. But she always told me that she trained their sales reps to talk 20%, listen 80%. And I think that's a very good balance, right? Even back when it was just Adam McInturf and I being the only two people essentially generating revenue for Tekmetric, I applied that. Every single demo I started with was me asking them questions, right? We didn't have our pricing on the website. We didn't have a marketing budget worth mentioning. It was all through word of mouth and referrals. So the person that reached out to me, there was a reason. I had to unequivocally understand that reason in order to solve the problem, right? So there was they wanted a better, most of the time it was they wanted a better customer experience. COVID, as many bad things as came from COVID, there was one good thing, was that it did help our business, because so many people have figured out that being cloud-based and being mobile, being able to work from anywhere was really important. And we were saying that for a while, but all of those things where I had to ask those people, because one person might say, it's really important that I'm taking care of my parents now. And that was the most important thing. So I could show them how they could access it on their phone, and et cetera. Or the next person might say, every competitor down the street now is doing texting and they're doing a DVI platform, but I want this all in one. So then I'm going to show them something different. Like they go to their shop, being mobile, maybe not, it was not as important to them. So I was going to show them how we could change their customer experience. So if I do a 45-minute or an hour-long demo, the first 15 to 20 minutes of it is me asking them questions to understand what are their pain points, to then move on and show them how I can help answer it. So believing in it, I mean, it's paramount. We've all been in business for long enough. You see through the shroud of a sales pitch when somebody doesn't believe in it, when it's not a good product. At some point, your spidey senses go off and you go, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't math here. So for me, I believed in it from the beginning because I knew me as a consumer, I wanted more. I could get more when I went to a barber shop. I could get more when I took my dogs to the groomer. I could get more when I went to the dentist. It didn't matter. There was a better customer experience in so many industries. And then you look at the independent automotive repair space, it was lacking massively. And I think it's still lacking as well in the dealership space. But dealerships were starting to adopt it. They had larger budgets. They had more resources. On the independent side, they didn't have as large of budgets, but we were able to come in at a price point and offer them the things that they could compete with dealerships overnight. And I knew it would change. And my wife told me, because I think I took about a 60% pay cut when I came over to Tekmetric to do this thing. And she just told me, just don't screw it up. But I trust you. She has faith that it was the right decision. So
it's safe to say, PJ, that you didn't screw it up.
I don't think I did. Yeah, I don't think I did. We made something out of it. So
well, and if you're listening, the majority of our listeners are in the automotive repair space. If you're listening, I think most of us know Tekmetric, at least have heard of Tekmetric, and Tekmetric is a company that it's easy to believe in. You guys do phenomenal with your customers. I love the discussion that you just shared about how important it is to ask questions, to be a better listener. When we think about communication, a lot of us are thinking about the words that are coming out of our mouth rather than the words coming into our ears. And you're describing, PJ, the importance of you're the subject matter expert here, yet you're the one who's asking all the questions early on, trying to get a better understanding of who you're about to serve and how you can best serve them. Talk about the importance of communication, how it applies to both work and at home. You're a phenomenal communicator, and that's why you're in the sales role that you're in, but also the head of business development for an incredibly successful and amazing company. Talk about the importance of communication and how you can apply it both at work and at home.
Yeah, if my wife listens to this, she'll probably say I'm not the best communicator at home, but we do, like she and I both work on that every day. And it is true. Like I have a 3.5-year-old son now. My wife is due any minute with our second kid. And like the way that my son receives information and the way that I say things to him is different than I will say them to my wife, and is different than I will say them to a potential client. And it's different than I would say it to a potential channel partner or even an integration partner at Tekmetric. Like every single one of those, I could be saying something quite similar, but it will be said differently to every single one of those. And you're right. If I say something right now in an elevated pitch or in an angry way, it's probably not going to be received well. If I say it in a way where, I use things like my voice inflection, my hands that I'm doing now, right? If I stand in front of a room, which I've been fortunate enough to be in front of rooms of 20 people to 700 or 800 people. I don't think I've been in a room yet over 1,000. I think that's my next goal. But like I've spoken in front of those rooms, and the way that I present and the way that I use my voice inflection, and that sales manager at that first dealership told us, he hung a mirror on our desk and he said, look at yourself when you're on the phone. Smile while you talk. And as I'm doing this now, I'm doing it as an example, I'm going to change my voice inflection. My voice has changed. You're smiling now.
Yeah, that's right.
I can control the outcome, the desired outcome, by using those things to be a more effective communicator. And they're just little tricks of the trade that I've learned over many, many years. So you're right. The message can be lost on the messenger. If you do not know how to deliver that message, then you're not going to get the desired outcome. I've always told people that sales is the transfer of knowledge and enthusiasm. So you can be the most knowledgeable human being ever. And if you talk like Eeyore and you're like, oh, well, we've got this feature over here, you're not going to get what you want. But you could also be bouncing off the walls like Richard Simmons and super excited, but you don't know what you're talking about, you won't get the desired outcome. So transferring knowledge and enthusiasm has been a recipe of success for myself in terms of sales, business development, and finding even those new opportunities, those new partnerships in the industry that help us be successful and make our company name more well known.
PJ Leslie just dropped PJ Leslie just dropped a fire nugget on this episode. PJ, man, that's amazing, and you're absolutely right. Smiles produce other smiles. You can hear a smile on the other end of the line when you're on a phone, for example. What advice would you give to a service manager or service advisor who struggles with their voice inflection, their tone of voice, recognizing the emotional intelligence that goes into serving a guest by listening rather than just trying to tell them what we think that they need to hear?
I'll start with my purview on the industry to explain why a service advisor should do this. So for me, I look at what's happening in the industry. The small guys are getting, medium size. The medium size are getting big, and the big ones are huge now. And so there's a ton of consolidation happening in our industry. And so if you think that you're a service advisor or a manager or a shop owner and your customers need you, you're wrong. They're about to have so many options that it'll make your head spin. And those that adapt will survive. There's an interesting and unique thing that's happening right now in the industry where there are publicly traded companies and large companies that have the exact same resources as what Billy Bob's Auto Repair has. You can have DVIs and you can have the texting and you can have the real-time reports and data pipelines. They both use an exceptionally similar tool. So any shop owner and service advisor who wants to compete, they can compete today and now. So the old mindset of my customers need me, like, oh, we're backed up for 2 weeks, forget it. It needs to be so far gone from your mindset, because backed up 2 weeks is not a bragging right. You're mismanaging your business.
That's right.
They're going to go to who says yes and who can get you in today or tomorrow at the latest.
So if I'm a service manager or a service advisor and I believe that our customers need me in order for us to be successful, I need to shift my paradigm. Just like you're talking about, it's about serving them as well as, or serving them rather than me thinking that they need me in order to be successful. And the same can be applied to leadership. If we're serving our team first, it's not about us. We're not the main attraction. This, of course, is a leadership podcast, PJ. Share with me what your definition of leadership is and the importance of serving those in your charge as well.
It's funny that you say that, because literally on the way here to be on the podcast, I was on the phone with a guy that's on my team. I'm now a manager at Tekmetric. I wasn't necessarily planning on it, but we have a team of just a couple of guys right now that are focused on selling into mid-market accounts, right? So less than 100 rooftops. And so I had one of those calls yesterday afternoon and one today. And I finish every single call with, I appreciate all the feedback. I've given you some directives and things that I need you to work on. What's the thing I can do better for you? And I always remind them, like, this is not a negative. I want you to always feel comfortable in telling me, what is the thing that you need from me to be successful? In terms of leadership, I've always looked at it like my job is not to boss people around. It's not to give orders. Yes, that's part of what you have to do at times because they may not know, but my job is to give them every single resource possible to be successful at their job. It's how they put food on their family's table. If I don't give them the things that they need to do that, I'm failing them. So I finished the call literally today, and unfortunately, he didn't have anything for me. But I always want to know. It's like when you and I were speaking earlier, I said, losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning. I don't really care what other managers are doing in our company. I don't care what my competitors are doing outside of Tekmetric. I don't care. I focus on what is the thing that I can do better today that would make me a better resource for them, right? The old atomic habits thing, right?
Yeah.
That 1% better, 1% better. I'm trying to get 1% better every single time. So for me, I always try and lead by example. I get up at 4:30, right? I almost always, at least 4 or 5 days a week, I want to exercise. I want to be in a different level of mindset and et cetera. So if they get on a call with me at 8 a.m. and they sound like they just woke up, I might call them out on that. Like, hey man, we start at 8, right? If that's what time we're supposed to have a meeting. Sounds like you just woke up and you're just having your first sips of coffee, and I've been up for 3.5 hours. Hard to catch up to then. And so lead by that example, but be the resource that they need and provide the resources that they need in order to be successful. That's what I focus on.
Love it, man. You're putting more tools in the toolbox for them, and being able to model for them what it looks like to level up and sharpen your axe on a daily basis. PJ, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling to kind of find their place in wherever they're at, trying to figure out how they can level up personally and professionally? What advice would you give to someone who is in a place where they're just struggling right now?
I feel like you're listening to my conversation. So I actually talked with my mom yesterday, and I said this, and so I guess that's probably why it's fresh on my mind. But I was talking to my mom yesterday, and we were even joking about me wanting to leave that little town soon, and et cetera. But like, there's moments and times of discomfort when you do that, and I have never grown or changed or felt like I was made better when I was comfortable. Even just going to the gym and exercising in the morning, like if you lift 15-pound weights, but you could really stretch it and go to a 35-pound weight, you need to do a 35 because your shirt won't fit better and your waist won't be smaller if you didn't run faster, if you didn't lift heavier. You have to create those moments of discomfort, and through action, right? You have to push yourself to do that thing. When you do it, you change. If you're not happy where you're at, change it. Don't talk about it.
Yes.
Don't tell your friends about it. Don't tell your mom about it. Just change it. You will be uncomfortable. You won't know where your next dollar is coming from. You won't feel like you have made the right decision for some time, but you might be shocked. You may be happier. You may be challenged. You'll feel more creative because you're problem solving in a new realm. Change it. Just, there's no one that can change it for you. Every single time, I moved from Northeast Texas into to Dallas, and then I ended up transferring. I went to Texas A&M, and I go to Texas A&M, and I moved to Houston. Like, I was from a town of 1,800 people. Every one of those things was uncomfortable. I go into the construction industry. After the Great Recession, I bought a business in Belize. I lived on an island in a Central American country for a year. Every single one of those was uncomfortable, and it was different. But I did it, and I grew from it massively, and you just kind of figure it out. It's no different than being a dad. I mean, you get it?
Yeah.
Like, everybody, if
got 4 of them.
I know, but I mean, like, if you wait forever, you wait till you're in the perfect spot and you've got everything planned out, it's too late.
Man, it's such good words of wisdom there, PJ. I mean, a lot of us don't take action because we are not motivated, we're not confident yet. We feel like it's not the right time, but you and I both know that the right time is right now. And oftentimes motivation and confidence tend to follow that action. But to your point, growth and comfort can't coexist. And so nothing changes if nothing changes. Speaking of discomfort, speaking of changes, let's revisit what you opened with. You guys just merged, or not merged, but acquired Shop Genie. And you were met with some surprising feedback recently. If you would open up about the change. Let's first talk about Shop Genie and what Shop Genie is for those listening, if they don't know, and then talk about how you guys are navigating this acquisition.
Yeah, so Shop Genie does CRM functionality. So they create websites, they do text blasts, email blasts, Google reviews, and then like Google SEM. Management. And so I've been getting asked about it. Tekmetric existed for a whopping 5 years, which is weird. It feels like it's like 5 years going on 15, but 5 years is really, I mean, we hit the market in 2019. And so since 2019, I've been getting asked like, hey, PJ, I love your shop software, but when are you going to add in marketing functionality? And so we had to kind of get to a point to where it was, buy versus build. These guys had a ton of traction in the market. They were growing very, very fast. But it was more about vision and mindset. I don't want to take words out of Sunil's mouth, but like in being close to Sunil and working with him, our CEO, and working with him, like he saw the vision and he saw the founder's mindset in the company and the guerrilla marketing, the growth very, very quickly with a shoestring budget, if you will. Those were the ways that we started out. And so that seemed to make a lot of sense in terms of a good partnership, right? And somebody that we can grow with. So it's been good. It's really our first acquisition. So it's new to all of us, I think. And so when you have this family over here that works really well together and this family over here that really works together, and you put them together, it's hard to make sure that they work together. And so far it's gone really well for both companies. But that's not an easy task. That is a very, very difficult task to make sure that that goes well. So Sunil and Kieran, the co-founder of Shop Genie, they've got their hands full.
Yeah.
They've definitely got their hands full, but it's going great, man. And it's been well received overall for the market. And we've had a lot of interest in a lot of those mid-sized clients as well, not only the SMB businesses, the single and two shop owners and so forth, but then the mid market as well has expressed a lot of interest. We've had a lot of people who just want to do business with less vendors. They want to be able to call one company and know that they can get an answer to a problem.
Hey man, we can relate to that. I mean, Limitless Leadership is a one-stop solution for a lot of your coaching needs, whether it be leadership, performance, and technician. Kieran O'Brien, if you're listening, man, you're next. I'm gonna shoot you a message and see if we can get you on the podcast. Love what you guys are doing. Really happy for you, and really excited to see where this thing grows. Because to your point, it's new, it's fresh. It might feel a little awkward right now. It may be a little uncomfortable. We want to get comfortable being uncomfortable because, to your point, growth and comfort can't coexist. So that being said, PJ, again, excited to see where this thing goes. Let me ask you. I just talked about coaching. Limitless Leadership does coaching, as we all know, leadership, performance, and technician coaching. Let me ask you, what is the greatest advice that you've ever received from a coach or a mentor?
This will be hard to answer. I will tell you the first thing I would is tell everyone listening to this is that whether you realize it or not, you need a mentor. And you've had mentors in your past, but you didn't define it as a business coach or a business leadership coach, et cetera. In your own circle, right? So as an entrepreneur or a business leader, you probably are looked upon in the higher ranks of, ranking against other people, let's say, right? But there are other people out there who've done it better than you, who may provide a better perspective than just the one that you have, because you have only your perspective or only what you and your wife may have seen or talked about. Yep. I would highly recommend, first and foremost, everyone needs a mentor or business coach. And you and I talked about this before. I think this industry is rampant with people who either are afraid to ask for it or don't think they need it, and either one is bad. It's terrible for your business. The best money I ever spent was to have a mentor come in and help me at the dealership level. And you and I talked about a company before the podcast of just like one I'm looking for just for professional development, to be a better person and a better leader. And I would pay for that for myself. I'm fine with it. It will make me better. So first and foremost, people need it more than they realize. The other part is that I hope that this gets out to the audience who may not ever go to a conference, who may not ever come knocking on your door and ask for it, but just know that there's probably 70, 80% of this industry that never goes out and looks for a better way of doing things.
Why do you think that is?
Half of it, I think, is at least ego.
Yeah.
There's some pretty big egos in our industry. And but here's the thing, they're somewhat well-founded. They were a great technician. They were a master certified technician, and they were phenomenal at working on cars. And then it's the old E-Myth thing, right? They started a business and they're like, this is not like working on cars, right? It's very, very different. And so many people in our industry come from that side of it, but they went to the school of hard knocks. They worked on their dad's lawnmower and then their buddies' cars, and then they actually formalized it with some certifications, but they figured it out on their own. Your window is not always that big in entrepreneurial endeavors, right? Cash can be burnt up fast, right? Why not go out and spend the extra $500, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, I don't care what the number is, in finding someone who can coach you and learn from their mistakes rather than your own. Shorten that learning curve as much as you possibly can. So first and foremost is just, you're not as smart as you think you are. There are other people out there who have done it before and can teach you from their mistakes and from their own learnings. Do that tomorrow. It's the best money I could have ever spent, was hiring a mentor and a business coach for me. Some of the best advice I've ever gotten, every conversation that I have is an opportunity, right? And being in business development, since I deal with our enterprise clients, I'm now managing our mid-market team, sales team, and then also looking for industry partnerships as well. So every conversation I have is, I look at it like it's an opportunity, right? You and I both like Ed Milet, right?
Yeah.
Ed Milet, I love his book, Power of One More. And he talks about that reticular activating system. And if you're always, if I want to go buy a red Porsche, I see red Porsches everywhere.
Yeah, that's
right. Suddenly they've just multiplied, right? But that's not true. Statistically, they existed before I ever started thinking about red Porsches. But I train myself and I look for opportunities each and every day. That's my job. So my RAS is activated at all times looking for opportunities, and those opportunities present themselves in so many ways throughout your day, throughout your week. Your job is to always look, my job at least, and I believe as an entrepreneur, is to look for those. It could be an opportunity to get 1% better today, right? A service advisor may need a little bit of coaching on the phone. It could be that a piece of land comes up for sale and you've been renting forever, right? Why aren't you going and talking to that broker? Well, I'm busy. You're not too busy. You're not too busy to invest in your future and own real estate, right? Whatever it may be throughout your day, be looking for those opportunities. And there's nothing bad that comes from that. There's absolutely nothing bad with having that reticular activating system activated, looking for those opportunities. And some you'll act on, most you'll act on, some you may not, but look for it.
I'm a big believer in the greatest investment we can make is in ourselves. I mean, I believe Warren Buffett was asked years ago, what's the greatest investment you ever made? And a lot of people expected him to say Berkshire Hathaway or something that, has really helped him, grow to be one of the richest men in the world. But he said it was a Dale Carnegie course that he took 50 years ago. And having been an attendee in a Dale Carnegie course, I can understand that mindset. But knowing that when we can invest in ourselves, it allows us to see things from a perspective that we didn't otherwise anticipate. And so to your point, you're talking about the importance of understanding it's an opportunity to meet somebody. It's an opportunity to talk to someone and recognize they have a perspective that we do not have. And so what you're describing is a relational conversation rather than a transactional conversation. So my plan, PJ, was to end this episode with asking about the greatest advice that you ever received from mentor or coach, but talking about relational versus transactional. As a salesman, how do you make sure that you're mindful of a relational approach and a relational experience with the person you're speaking with, rather than a transactional, which ultimately you're trying to get the transaction to towards the end? But how do you focus on relations first?
If I'm talking to somebody, I'm speaking to them and asking questions to understand. I'm not speaking to them to sell them something. I don't even know what they need.
Yeah.
Why am I going to talk about that today? It's not going to happen. Even like when Tekmetric did business with Christian Brothers, I'm telling you, it was so pivotal to our company that I don't know that we would have existed without it. But we didn't go in there selling to them day one over and over and over. We talked and talked and talked and asked questions to understand what did they want to do? What was their vision for the future? What kind of experience did they want to have? What did they want to grow the organization to in the next 5 and 10 and 20 years, right? And so we weren't selling. We weren't trying to be transactional. And then suddenly a transaction happened, right? It was very clear that there was benevolence, a willingness to help, willingness to understand, a partnership to grow together. I think they still come to our office once a month and have lunch with Sunil. Sometimes it's just a chat.
Yeah.
There's nothing being sold. There's nothing being transacted. And so in my experience, each and every time I've made sales, it is more about, trying to understand and then provide value to those people. Even when I speak at all these conferences, I tell people all the time, I said, my job is to provide value to those people. And sometimes it does drive demand because there's so many people that have been to, it's the first conference they've ever been to. It's the first time they've branched out. And it may be the 100th time that I've said it. You get this, you speak in large rooms.
Yep.
My job is to have that knowledge and that enthusiasm and communicate in a way that it gets through, it gets past their ears and into their mind. And so what I have to do is provide that value and talk to them like it's the very first time I've ever said it.
Love that.
And share info that I have this unique perspective. We do business with almost 10,000 shops now. I get this perspective of what publicly traded companies do, what a small independent shop does, what integration partners are seeing in the industry, and I can impart that on somebody who this is their very first time to ever leave their shop. Why would I waste that?
PJ, it's so important for listeners who are listening to this episode right now. If you work in a shop, this is pivotal that you hear this. You're describing the same type of relationship that a wedding coordinator should have with folks who are getting married. Because for a wedding planner, someone who does this regularly, every year, they're planning 20, 25 weddings a year. And, they do this for 10 years. We're looking at 200 to 250 weddings that they've planned over the course of their career. But for this bride and groom, it's their first and only time. And if you're listening and you're working in a shop, recognize that the guest experience should be treated as a relationship. And that's it. When you treat it as a relationship and you're serving your guest, you're taking care of your guest, you're truly loving your guest through the process, the transaction is a natural byproduct of exceptional standard setting service. And so I'm not saying that sales are not important. I know that KPIs are going to drive those sales. You need to make a profit in order to stay in business. And we're going to talk about sales processes throughout it. However, if you're focused on the relationship, the transaction will naturally occur. So man, I can't thank you enough, PJ, for sharing that mindset, which is so important for every sales professional, regardless of the industry, to hear. It's about the relationship first, serving people first, seeking first to understand, then be understood, asking questions, listening instead of hearing. Speaking of listening, thanks for letting me ramble for the last few minutes, PJ. Man, I want to thank you for being on the show. I'll ask you, this is my final question.
Okay.
Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Let's do
So
it.
I just asked you for the greatest advice you've ever received from a mentor or coach. I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to someone listening to this episode, just in general? What's the best piece of advice you could give someone right now?
I'll focus probably more on the automotive space because obviously you and I are in that space, been there for a while. I think 2 bits of advice is, as I said earlier, you need a mentor. You need outside perspective, more than just your wife, more than just your friends who may just be telling you what you want to know. Get somebody that'll tell you what you need to hear.
Any coaching companies out there you can think of that might be helpful for this?
I mean, Limitless Leadership sounds pretty good to me.
Thanks.
So yeah. If we're judging solely on beards, there's no contest, right?
Appreciate
So
you,
let's
man.
be honest. You have to get that perspective from someone who will tell you what you need to hear. And like I said, you have experience, right? You've been in the trenches with them. You know what it's like to write service, to operate at a corporate level across multiple organizations, right? Why wouldn't I want to learn from that? I gain more from talking with you or talking with another individual than I would just from reading a book. I try and read at least 3 or 4 books a year, but I learn from those. I learn more from a 30 or 45-minute conversation with somebody than I do from a book. And so most people in our industry are probably going to do that, right? So I advise everyone to have a mentor and a coach as soon as possible because it's pivotal and it's so impactful almost immediately. Number 2, I would say that I see so many people who talk to those customers, right? And they're telling them like, hey, your car needs the wah-wah thingy-mabopper, right? And the customer doesn't hear any of that. We talk about the message and what they receive. They don't know what a CV boot is or a CV axle and why they need that. But you have to go at it from a perspective of educating, right? So I always talk about when I go to those conferences and I speak trying to provide value and trying to educate people because they may not get to see what 9,500 shops do, how many pictures they take, which drives the ARO up, or if you took 24 pictures, it actually comes down. People don't know that. I get the unique perspective to see that. So what I do is try and demystify it, and which we can do in the auto repair space. Customers don't want to come and see us, and they're seeing us less and less. I think the average is, I hear, as low as 1.7 times per year, as high as 2.2 times per year, where they used to see us 3 and 4 times. So you're getting less and less opportunities to see that customer. If you're not maximizing it and giving an amazing customer experience, educating them on what their car needs, why it needs it, and doing it at a fair price and doing it at their convenience, not yours, then you're going to go out of business. But if you do those things, you're going to absolutely thrive. I know shops that are single shops that do hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales a month. I know some that have 5 locations that do 100,000 a month, right? It doesn't matter how many locations you have. I know some that have a single shop that do more than somebody that has 4 or 5. There's a correlation. They educate, they serve, and they do it at the customer's convenience. So find that mentor, educate your customers, go at it with a mindset of servitude and helping your customers, providing value. You're going to be successful. You're going to be fine.
Absolutely love what you just shared, PJ. Education and servant mindset is, man, that's so pivotal. Being able to share with your guests. If we're telling our guests something, we're speaking to them. If we're sharing, we're speaking with them. Being able to educate them by speaking with them is key. Man, PJ, can't thank you enough for being on the show. Hopefully this isn't your last time on the Limitless Leadership Podcast. Thank you for being here, man.
Happy to join. Thank you so much.
Each episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Have a great day. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep